real quick, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I know that you're also a student at the Kubert schools.
Yes, yes, yeah.
So did that come before or after the web stuff?
Before, actually.
Before.
It's
So
funny
the
because what's that?
yeah. No, so it came before. So there was always kind of the desire to make comics, even though you were doing webisode things previously.
Yeah, like I always wanted to be more of a comic strip artist because I my art, even though I can do it, it's never, when I look at it, it does not look like, one of the the Marvel artists. Basically, I've
It's
always
well,
had
like
a,
it's like
what's that?
Sunday Funnies kind of artwork, a little
Yes.
bit like the stuff that's in Hero Envy, right? That's you.
No, no, that wasn't me. That
Oh,
was a guy we hired to make a
oh, okay.
cartoony book. My Swamp Tales is more my
Oh,
style.
Swamp Tales. Yeah, but
Yeah.
even looking at that, it seems a little bit more like Sunday Funny strips,
Yeah,
kind of
yeah, like kind of
style
like Garfield,
a
Far
little bit.
Side kind of thing.
Right, right.
But I was always bad with perspective and drawing, like, like ripped guys and ripped women. Like I couldn't do it well. It always looked cartoony. So
Hey,
that's kind of
some
why
professionals can't draw feet, so don't feel
yeah,
bad.
yeah.
I
Whoever could you be talking about?
have no idea.
But I was
He
gonna
blocked me on
say,
Instagram.
yeah, right. um, but what I was gonna say is, like, so that was, I guess, like how I kind of fell more into lettering and more into writing, because I knew my strengths were not. I wasn't going to be able to make a superhero book to the way it looks in Marvel or DC. So I was like, all right, I know my strengths, and my strengths are not there. So that's how I kind of fell into being more of a cartoonist. But the funny thing is when I went to Kubert school, and this is how I kind of went into film, was when I was there, I kind of got obsessed with Kevin Smith because,
Who didn't?
um, at the time, what's that?
Who didn't in that
Yeah,
era?
right. Yeah, at the
You know
time,
what I
it was the
mean? Like
only
he's
he.
so prolific. He really is the modern age
Uh
Stan Lee.
yeah,
You
he
know?
was. And like when I was going to Kubert school, but I was also working part time at the theater, and Mallrats had just come out, and like I went to see it, and I was like, man, I freaking love this movie. This movie's like,
Yes.
I feel, what do the kids say now? I feel seen,
I feel
like
seen. Yeah. Oh,
like
that movie is very influential on me as well,
oh,
just as a
big
comic
time.
creator. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
It
and it
just
was
because
like a shared universe. It was all this
yeah,
stuff that is kind of common now, but it wasn't common then. And
yeah.
then
And Stan Lee's first cameo.
yes, yeah. Then when I saw Stan Lee and they were talking comics, all that
Yeah.
stuff was great. The comic store within the movie, and and they made, and Kevin Smith made Brody like this comic fan, but he was super freaking cool. Like
He
he was
was the
just like,
cool. Well, because
didn't
that's a
take anybody's shit. It
yeah.
was just like
You saw both,
funny.
right? You saw the Steve Dave and the guy
Yeah,
in line, and like they had the full spectrum of the comic community there. They had like the nerd guys who were
absolutely.
just like super like anal about like story content and continuity and
Yeah,
whatever, like those guys, and there's nothing wrong with that either. And
yeah,
then they
right.
had like your Brody, you know what I mean,
Yeah,
like
yeah,
a guy who read comics and
absolutely.
you know shot the shit and
Yeah.
whatever.
And it's after I saw Mallrats, I was talking to the guy at the cinema. He's like, "Yeah, now you got to go see the first one." I was like, "Wait a second, there's a first one?" You know, um, and he's like, "Yeah, you got to see Clerks." And I was like, "Clerks?" And so I went and found Clerks, on VHS at the time, and I watched that, and I was like blown away. But that was also put in my head, like, hey, you can make independent films. Like, look at how, what was that movie cost? 28,000 or something. It was really like cheap at the time.
Yeah,
And,
yeah.
and it
30
was like,
K across three credit cards or something like that.
yeah, yeah, isn't that
Yeah.
nuts? So, but yeah, that's sort of how I got inspired to want to do, film. And it kind of went from there,
Yeah,
so.
yeah. Footnote actually, real quick before we do anything else is if we want to refer back to the Indie Comics Relay episode with George O'Connor, there we talked about actually all kind of doing film stuff before transitioning into comics.
Oh yeah, yeah, because
Yeah,
he's doing stuff too, right? I'll have to go back and
you
look at
did.
that episode. Maybe there's some good bits I can pull out.
Right, right. So we were talking about Kevin Smith and how kind of influential he was, And I was, thinking that, anybody who reads Surrounded by Death, and more specifically, we're talking about Mallrats, anybody who reads Surrounded by Death can't not deny that how much Mallrats had an influence on me, because there's a lot of that feeling there in that book.
Oh yeah,
Uh,
absolutely. Even a Hero Envy was heavily inspired by Kevin Smith. Like I
right.
remember, like before we started doing it as a web series, we had written a screenplay, and I told my writing partner, because he had written most of it, and I politely told him we gotta throw this out because this is just Mallrats again. Like he literally, it was
He
set
just
in a
rewrote
mall.
Mallrats.
Honestly, it was very close. It was and it was just it was centered almost the same kind of stuff, where it's like a guy that was trying to find a girl, like had a girlfriend that he couldn't quite get together with. I mean, it was it was ridiculous. But I do remember we had some of the elements of the script made it into the web. So like we did an episode about cartoons, and we threw a lot of the cartoon talk that we had in it, which Kevin Smith would do a lot of too. But
Right, right.
uh getting back to when I, like when I was still at school, like having seen his stuff put me on a path to, I wanted to make movies at that time and not be into comics anymore. It was kind of felt like it was like the shiny new thing to do. Like, and
Right.
I was well into that, and I kind of forgotten comics. Like I kind of walked away. Yeah, I was more concentrated on that.
And in fairness to you, it's not like the comic industry itself was booming at that time, where like it's the, shiny thing to jump to, whereas like I even feel like now a lot of people are treating indie comics the way we treated that indie film thing. You know what I mean? So it's
Yeah.
like everybody's trying to throw their hat into the indie comics arena nowadays.
Yeah, well, because the things have kind of flipped. Like people see that comics can make movies now, so everyone's
Right.
trying to make the comics so they can make a movie with it. And it's like,
But that's just that's the last reason to get into indie
oh,
comics. Like
absolutely,
that's your
like,
first class ticket to heartbreak. You know what I mean? Like,
absolutely, you gotta love the
you know,
comics medium, and to be able to do that, like I feel like that's something that's in back of all creators' heads. Like, oh, it'd be awesome if Hollywood came and wanted to make my comic into a movie,
yeah,
but
yeah. That
you can't let that be the driving factor. That should be like the cherry on the top of your sundae, and the rest
that's
of your
that
Sunday should be just wanting to make comics.
so that daydream, the oh, this will get made into a movie one day, is like the oh, I'm gonna win the lottery one day. You know
Absolutely,
what I mean?
yeah,
It's
yeah,
the creative like equivalent to that, and it's like something where you think about and you go, oh, what would I do if this? What would I do if that? Oh,
yeah,
would it be cool to see this character live action? Who would play this and who would play that? But really, it's like, and and that's not to say you can't win the lottery. You
yeah,
know what I
right.
mean? But you got to pay to play.
Yeah,
So
you gotta pay to play. You gotta like also like the more books you make, the better you get as a creator, and you learn, you constantly learn how to make a comic better. Like, and that's the one thing about just doing it. Like whenever you see a creator, like a creator that's made it, usually almost, I'd say almost 100% of the time, their advice for people to break into the industry is just make comics. And like,
just make comics.